All right, so before we get started, I'm going to have each person introduce themselves. We're going to start on the far right with Ron.
Hi, I'm Ron Taylor. I'm an advisor with the Morgan State University journalism program, and I've been working with students on projects like this. I was part of the Selma project with Joel, which was a very rewarding project. This one has been even more informative because it helped it helped define what was happening in Washington and Baltimore. I live in Washington, but it helps define what's happening in Baltimore. Baltimore is an evolving city. Things are changing there rapidly, and when you pass through that area, you see areas that it's clear that there are no places to get a decent meal, to get the components for a decent meal. And I've wondered often, why is that? Why is that evolving? I'm beginning to learn now exactly why that's happening. But I'll pass that on to Jazmine.
My name is Jazmine Hawes. I'm a student at Morgan State University. I'm a senior studying broadcasting and integrated media production. I basically volunteered to do this project. It was for class credit, but I was taking too many credits, so I was just like, I'm just gonna volunteer to do it. Because it was really interesting, and I really wanted to figure out what food insecurity meant, and basically in the two areas, and I wanted to gain another perspective, and it's been pretty good.
My name is Beets. I'm a Master's of Science in Journalism student at WVU. I don't know, this is really my first experience in the Reed College of Media. I have a background in biology, so this was really just a great overall experience to, really get into the journalism aspect of the world, so.
Just a little bit closer. We have too many chairs. I'm David Smith. I'm faculty here at the College of Media. Been here for about 4 years now, and before that I was a visual journalist at various newspapers all over the South, and I don't know, it's been a great experience. I'm from North Carolina originally. I'm not from West Virginia, so the more that I get out into the state and learn more about the state, I see a lot of the same things that Ron was talking about. It's really been interesting to compare the two, the West Virginia and Baltimore, and a lot of the food access trends. So this is my second Innovator in Residence class that I've been on, and we've been lucky to have folks like John. So I've been grateful to be a part of it.
I'm Hilary Kinney. I'm a senior journalism student getting ready to graduate, super excited. I was really interested in this class. David actually told me about it because I've been involved in a lot of service projects related to food security here on campus, and I've done research with Dr. Bradley Wilson in the Food Justice Lab. So this was a great combination of my interests and my major, and it's been really eye-opening. I didn't know a lot about food security outside of Appalachia, so being able to work with Morgan State students was probably my favorite aspect of this entire project, I think. It's been a good experience for sure.
All right, great. I think one of the things that I was really impressed by with this project was how well the students did, and I know that sounds like kind of like a terrible thing to say, but I just know how I was in college, and I was like, man, if these students are anything like me, they're not gonna work hard. They're gonna turn in assignments if an assignment's due at midnight, they're gonna turn it in at 5 a.m. with some long, drawn-out lie about how their grandmother's sick or something. These are things that I did. So I was kind of expecting that again because I just figure students do that, but they really surprised me, and they did a good job. Funny story about Jazmine. There are actually two versions of that animation. I did one, I voiced one, and Jazmine voiced one, and I was at my house or at my apartment looking through the different versions, and my wife heard it, and she was like, "Yeah, who's that other voice on the animation? Is that an instructor or something? Because that one's better." And I was like, "Damn." You know what I mean? Sometimes you just lose, So that's why we decided to have hers because it was just better. I don't know what that says about me. But no, it was very, very good. So my first question is, what was your biggest takeaway when for the West Virginia people when traveling to Baltimore, for the Baltimore people when traveling to West Virginia for the different reporting projects? What was your biggest takeaway when going into a community that you aren't familiar with? And I guess we could start with Hilary and kind of go.
Okay, I have a really good story about this one. So when we traveled to Charleston at the end of the project for a few days, our group planned to go to Manna Meal, a soup kitchen in the area, which John talked about. A lot of working class people were there on their lunch breaks. A lot of people were filling out job applications. That really opened my eyes to the working class poor in the state. But we went there twice over the course of a couple of days. The first day, we were totally not emotionally prepared for going into that place. I mean, we had a camera and we were ready to do some really great reporting, and then all of a sudden we just felt like we were strangers, we were outsiders, we didn't know a lot about what these people were experiencing. So we didn't get a lot from that day. I was very emotionally frustrated because I consider myself a really big people person. So I was like, I don't know how to engage in conversation with these people about these really big problems they're having in their lives. So had an emotional breakdown with the team the first day. We really didn't want to go back. We wanted to find a way out of doing that assignment, I'm pretty sure. But we reconvened and we said we're going to go back and we are going to engage in conversation with these people because we're all humans. Even though I'm not experiencing the same problems that they are, we can connect on so many different levels. And I ended up getting into an hour-long conversation with this guy named Ron. We keep in touch via email sometimes because he just had an amazing story. He used to own his own print shop, and he just had a lot of unfortunate events that happened to him that led him to being homeless. And that was my takeaway. When you're reporting on social justice issues, it's important to realize the problems of the people that you're working with, but not to create a divide between you and them. Although they're experiencing something you are not, chances are they've experienced a lot of things that you have in your life. So that was my big takeaway. It was awesome.
I definitely remember the breakdown. It was I was like, if this was a reality TV show, I just remember thinking it in my head. If this was a reality TV show, this would be the part that would be on the commercial. But no. It was a really, really good. Yeah. It was a really, really good the way that you, Simone, and other people in your group kind of worked with that. David?
So, kind of building off what Hilary said, as a faculty member, as a teacher, we kind of, at least my way of teaching is to kind of, I guess, pedagogically speaking, scaffold things. So I would go out and work with the students and model, go into model interviewing and do things and work along with students. And then slowly back off and let them take over. I think that's a good way of students learning in the field. This trip in particular, and John touched on this, is I learned that I need to back off a little bit more as a teacher because the students were just so proactive and able to go out, have a setback, process it, go back out and turn that into a lesson that they've learned. With a little bit of help from us, but learning to back off a little bit more and let the students learn firsthand was a really big lesson for me. This is the first project where I went out with a group of students to do a long-term project like this, and that was fun actually. So.
Yeah, I was one of the students in the group that went to Walmart that John was talking about that was potentially at risk of getting arrested. No, it was great. We had done all this research on Walmart and we had found out how I guess how the employment structure worked at Walmart, and we weren't really happy with it. We wanted to interview so many people, some employees at Walmart, and it just didn't work out. And I think that setback really gave us a push and really kind of inspired us to finish the project and to kind of find another avenue, for our answers. And I think learning how to deal with a situation like that was my greatest takeaway.
I don't really have a specific story. I have so many actually, but I think my biggest takeaway was just basically working with West Virginia. You have like these two groups from two different worlds, and we're both being put out of our element. So I think mine was just being able to cope and be able to like work in a whole nother different environment. Yeah, that was just mine.
Watching students, watching journalism students go through the process of discovering information that they didn't know before, that they didn't realize that all poor people didn't look a certain way, and that people had stories, that people had experiences that the students hadn't anticipated. To find that there was a person who used to own a business and now was in a soup kitchen getting his daily meal was eye-opening to some of the students. And to see that revelation occur is a rewarding thing for somebody like me who's been around a couple of places and seen a couple of things. And to see students come to that realization was very rewarding.
Sorry, I know that the story.
You're looking for Ron?
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah. The story they keep referencing is this one right here that you can see later on. You can kind of go through it. He's looking at me because I'm not talking into the mic. Sorry. That you can see and that you can look at as the day goes forward. Now that I think back, this actually was one of the most compelling ones. So the next question is for the students. Which project was your favorite, or which project or story was your favorite to work on, and why? I think you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron's was definitely my favorite. I think I talked a little bit about why, and it was also probably just the best reporting project I've ever done in my career as an undergraduate. Learned a lot about him and about myself through it. So.
Cool. Nick.
I thought the real food farm was very interesting. We're in the middle of urban Baltimore, and you walk down 2 blocks, and all of a sudden you're in a farm. Being from West Virginia, we have farm all around us, and the last thing I expected in Baltimore was a farm, and that was probably my favorite project to work on.
Did you guys fly a drone around that? Was that the one, or was that a different one?
No, that was a different one.
Okay. But so he's talking about the Real Food Farm. They're an organization that basically they make stuff at their big farm somewhere in Baltimore, and they put it in a truck and they drive it around and they sell it for an actual. I think it's a pretty lower price. But I remember we were outside of the truck. I think it was Sinclair Cruel who just got a job at PBS or something, PBS NewsHour. But I remember her and Emily, I don't know if she's in the audience, but they walked up to this like random guy who was like shopping, and Sinclair was basically like, he looks interesting, let's go talk to him. And he was basically saying that like he had a bunch of health problems, and that his doctor told him he needed to eat better, but there was no place to get it, and that basically this truck is basically how he goes grocery shopping. It was very interesting. Jazmine?
My favorite was visiting a food pantry in McDowell County. A woman was talking about some of her customers and how close she is with them. And one couple in particular that she was really close with was a couple, they were supposedly rich. Like they had a really nice house, really nice car, but they had to go to the food pantry. And we didn't understand why, but she explained that they had a death in the family, and one of them got sick, so they had to pay a bunch of medical bills. They had to pay for a funeral. They had to pay for all these type of things. So that kind of limited them to, spend money on certain things, and they had to cut back on going to grocery stores. So they had to visit the food pantry. So that was kind of eye-opening. That how Ron Taylor, he said earlier. Food justice or food insecurity really doesn't have a face. Like you can't put it to, oh, this homeless guy, he has to go to the food pantry. It could be someone next door to you and you don't even know it. So I think that was my favorite, just learning that whole spiel. That was really cool.
Cool. And we're actually running low on time, so I'm just gonna do one more. All right, yeah, sure. What was your biggest challenge for all five of you, what was your biggest challenge when working on this project from a reporting standpoint?
My challenge was definitely, I think, working with Morgan State students. It's really hard to work like remotely with each other, and I think that we all kind of experienced challenges getting to know each other and also dealing with a topic that was really sensitive. It was an awesome challenge, but I think that was the hardest part for me and for our group as well. But we overcame that in the end, which was really good.
Yeah, I think one thing, because that was a challenge for me too, just being honest, having two different classrooms in two different places. But one thing I was telling the students while the class was going on, because we mainly did communication for this class through Slack. And I think, I forgot who I was talking to. It was either a Morgan student or a WVU student. But they were talking about, they were like, I don't really get to see my group members, face to face as much as I'd like. And I told them, my job at CNN, everybody's everywhere. I think like 5 people on the team I work on, are in Hong Kong. So I've never seen them. I don't even know if they exist. You know what I mean? They could not be real people. But we talk on Slack and through email, and we have to get our communication across to each other the best way we can to do the best job we need to do. If they end up working in a national newsroom, that's probably what's going to happen. A reporter or producer or editor is probably going to be, in Tennessee while they're in, New York. And I thought this was good practice for that.
Yeah, so I'm continuing to talk about that. I think that it's easy for us we can bring in speakers via Google Hangout and Skype and everything like that, but and we had our first few classes via Google Hangout, but there's nothing like when the students get together and finally meet each other and start building relationships, because we can do things remotely all we want, but being in the same room makes a huge difference. So I mean, if we plan to do this again, I would say we probably should build that in earlier in the course so that they can build relationships a little bit earlier.
I mean, I would say this is my first experience, in the journalism world, and I didn't really get a chance to dip my toe in the water and get a feel for what it was like. I kind of just jumped straight into it. But fortunately, the students that I worked with and the professors, they were very welcoming and very understanding, and I think that I learned a lot more than what I would have learned in a classroom sitting down from a textbook. I think this is a very great, out of the world applicable experience, and I think that's probably what I'm most appreciative of. Yeah.
My most challenging thing was the man on the street interviews, because it's one thing to be able to do an interview on your campus, you're just interviewing people that you know and people that's around you, but when you go to a whole nother state and you have to talk and you have to talk to people that you really don't know, it's kind of challenging, and I think everybody had that challenge. Even if they were from West Virginia, they had that challenge as well, because we weren't on our main campuses. So we had to really step out of our element and actually, try to find a way to create a conversation with them. So
there is a paradox in this country of a place that can produce plenty, and yet there are people who are hungry. I'm still having a difficult time wrapping my mind around the idea that places like Walmart and institutions like Whole Foods capitalize on the hunger that goes on in this country. And it's a paradox that we began to wrestle with in this project, and I think that we're beginning to come to some understanding of. Pardon me.
Yeah, so I would, sorry, Ron, were you finished? Sorry.
No, that was...
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, so I'd say the biggest challenge that I went through was, because not the journalism was a challenge, but that wasn't really my biggest challenge, because it's stuff that I had experience with. I had built a app like that before, or not exactly like that, but similar. So I kind of knew what to do. The Medium page, I had built publications before, so I kind of had an idea for how to do that. I would say like my biggest challenge was like teaching. Like I said, I had never been a teacher before, I think I was talking to a colleague about this, and I was like, yeah, I had to teach this class, and I was like, kind of like, you know, really more into the journalism and like really kind of nonchalant about the teaching before it started. And she gave me this like 30-minute lecture on how like, you know, what you do is kind of like what they will mirror and like you're preparing them for the future. And I was like, oh, damn, like this is serious. Okay, I need to like get in and like, you know, focus. And I'd say like letting the students kind of like do their own thing. I kind of like loosened up after like 4 weeks, but there was one situation. We were at this market in Baltimore, and David, who has more experience teaching than I do, we were shooting a 360 video, and David put the 360 camera, or he had the students. He gave the students the 360 camera. So first of all, like at the school I went to, we didn't have like a bunch of like fancy equipment, like 360 cameras and stuff like that. So he gave this. Okay. So he gave the students a 360 camera. He was like, here, take this to the market and put it in the middle of the market and leave it there. And I was like, David, like you want to put this in the middle of the market, you know, with a bunch of people, like we're responsible for this. Like I was like going through so many things in my head. I was like, if we go back and this camera's not with us, like these students don't know what they're doing with the equipment. But you know, the camera is still here, and the students, like they knew how to operate all of the equipment. So that was like a big sigh of relief, and like they knew what they were doing. So that was like a challenge for me at first, but then I got to kind of like settle down when I got to see some of their work and realize like, oh, like they're really good and they're like, you know, just about ready to join different newsrooms around the country. So yeah, that's our project. So we did. All right. And like I said, you can later on, you can go through the Medium page and like read through some of the stories. Ron's story is really interesting. You guys can watch that video. The Real Food Farm story is really great. The timeline's really great. And there's a really good kind of little animated explainer that a group did here. If I could just scroll down and find it. Oh, come on, John. Where is it? Here we go. That they did, that's basically kind of like how the food system works. And you guys can go through that later on too, if you want to. Yeah, so yeah, thank you guys, and thank you all for listening. I think after this, we're supposed to have a break, but we're kind of running behind. Sorry, Hannah. Don't kill me. Sorry. But our next speaker is going to be David Eads from NPR. He's going to talk about their lead pipe project, and that's going to be in this room, I believe. It's going to be right here. Sorry, it's going to be here. It is going to be here. And then after David, Talia Buford from ProPublica is going to come up here and talk about her reporting process and kind of going into these different communities. So sit tight, strap in. It's going to be a wild day. Talk about audience engagement stuff, and we're all excited about it and reporting. All right, cool.